Thanks for joining our special live coverage of South Korea's 45th cabinet meeting of this year. In just a moment, we will head over to the presidential office in Yongsan, where President Yoon Suk-yeol will preside over today's meeting. He is expected to address the public on his recent diplomatic trip to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Now, a major part of President Yoon's economic agenda was strengthening energy cooperation to overcome hurdles as the world moves toward a post-oil era. He returned home with over $20 billion worth of deals with the Middle Eastern nations. Now, that includes building 17 LNG carriers, which is a part of deals made with Qatar. Plus, at a time when geopolitical conflicts and economic uncertainties are apparent globally, Yoon's Middle East trip is timely. The latest cooperation between South Korea and Middle Eastern nations cemented the need to join hands and become partners to safeguard against all the possible troubles like military tension and financial shocks. Having Saudi and Qatar's back could also come in handy for South Korea when dealing with North Korea issues, since both of them have diplomatic relations with the North, meaning they could play a role and exert influence over other Middle Eastern nations who may be assisting the regime's nuclear and missile programs. And again, we are waiting for the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol to preside over the 45th cabinet meeting of this year. It looks like the meeting has just kicked off. We'll come back afterwards.
국무회의를 시작하겠습니다.
Meeting. Let us start the cabinet meeting.
지난주
Last week,
대한민국 대통령으로서
I made
처음으로
a state visit to Saudi Arabia
사우디아라비아와 카타르를
and Qatar as the first
방문했습니다.
Korean president, South Korean president. Following a state visit to the UAE earlier this year, the state diplomacy with the big three companies in the Middle East was completed. We have made many economic achievements, in particular. The 130 economic delegation members accompanying myself signed 63 MOUs and contracts worth a total of $20.2 billion in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, including the $29 billion MOU signed during Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed's visit to Korea end of last year, and the $30 billion investment promise during the UAE visits early this year. A huge playground worth $79.2 billion, or approximately 107 trillion won, has been created in the Middle East. Such large-scale exports and orders will revitalize the economy and people's livelihood by creating quality jobs. And Saudi Aramco is pursuing in Ulsan with an investment of 9.3 trillion won, with the Shine project, is planned to have a construction period of 3.5 years. And at the moment, there are 17,000 people working at the site, and including hardware, software, logistics, development, and production. The effect of creating jobs, the ripple effects, is immense that it's difficult to calculate. The gas plant project we won in Saudi Arabia will create thousands or tens of thousands of new jobs, including design, engineering, equipment, production, and dispatch to overseas sites. And another example would be an LNG vessel that was ordered from Qatar, and to build one of that vessel, approximately 10,000 specialized workers are necessary. So considering all around ripple effects, the effect of job creation will be much bigger. Creation of such 17 ships have been signed during my visit this time, and negotiations for the main contract for an additional 27 ships are in the final stages. Early this year, a smart farm company that participated in the UAE economic delegation and signed an MOU early this year is said to have increased employment by 20% in less than 1 year. During this visit to Middle East, 4 smart farm-related
우리 정부
MOUs were
들어서서
signed.
집중적인 투자가 이루어진 스마트팜은
Ever since I took
수직
the
농업에 대한
government,
수요가
the office,
무궁무진한
smart farms
중동
in which intensive
커다란
investments have been
잠재력을
made
가지고 있습니다.
have great potentials
조만간
in the Middle East, where there is endless demand for vertical farming.
소식을
We will be
기대해도
able to
좋을
expect
것입니다.
official contracts and new hiring
튼튼한 에너지 안보는
soon.
경제와 산업의
Strong
기초입니다.
energy security is the foundation of our economy and industry. Through this visit, we solidified our energy security. Following the 4 million barrel contract with UAE in January, we signed a 5.3 million barrel crude oil joint reserve agreement with Saudi Arabia.
위기가 발생할 경우
In an event of crisis in the international supply and demand of crude oil, we have the priority right to purchase crude oil in reserve, and the profits from renting our storage facilities during the reserve period is guaranteed. Oil-producing countries in the Middle East are undertaking major reforms across the economy and society in preparation for the post-oil era. Leaders of the world are directly leading the transition to high-tech and green industries. In this context, the Saudi Arabia expressed its support for the carbon-free union that I proposed at the UN General Assembly. During my visit, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy signed an MOU for the Hydrogen Oasis initiative with the Saudi Ministry of Energy. As a result, Korea and Saudi Arabia have laid the foundation for cooperation across the entire hydrogen ecosystem, including production, distribution, and use of hydrogen. In addition, as Korea has the world's best technology and know-how in nuclear power plant facilities, construction, and operation, we will develop nuclear power plant cooperation with Middle Eastern partner countries, including the UAE. We have experienced around 50 years ago the Middle East boom in energy and construction. Our companies and workers have shown in the land of the heat their sincerity and dedication, and thus we have earned our trust and credibility. In addition, foreign currency earned in the Middle East served as a stepping stone for our economy to overcome the era of high oil prices in the late 70s. Now, we would like to expand the horizon of cooperation into future high-tech industries. Together with Saudi Arabia, we will build electric vehicles and also ships and participate in the construction of future new cutting-edge cities such as Neom City, and also biomedical, smart farm, digital, these high-tech industries, and also new and renewable carbon-free energy industries will be where we will expand our cooperation. And considering that desert areas have strengths in solar power, we will expand our Korean companies' participations in solar power generation facilities in Saudi Arabia and in other Middle Eastern countries. And with Qatar's King Tamim, we have set AI as a top priority for cooperation. We decided to cooperate in sharing and utilizing data, creating added value, and establishing international AI standards. In January, after my UAE visit, my visit to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, we agreed to expand in earnest the defense cooperation, which will be the basis for economic cooperation. We have been contributing to the training of the UAE military by dispatching the ARC unit to the UAE since 2011 and have created a framework for joint development and production of weapon system with Saudi Arabia, which is different from the scale of defense industry cooperation that we have done so far. And together with Qatar, it will not be a one-time cooperation, but a mid to long-term systematic defense cooperation framework that we would like to pursue. And not only the Middle East, but including Europe and Southeast Asia, the demand and interest in our weapon system and defense projects is growing. In the future, our defense industry market will be expanded to the global market.
대외 의존도가 세계에서 가장
Korea,
높은 우리나라는
which has the highest level of external dependence in the world,
5천만의
it is
시장에서
expanding the economic
5억의
arena
시장,
in the companies
50억의
in which companies can
시장을 넓혀
operate,
성장
expand from a
동력을
market
찾고
of 50 million to a market of 500 million.
정상 순방 외교는
And the summit
우리
diplomacy
국민과
is the
기업의
optimal
글로벌 시장
platform
개척을
to help
돕는
our people
최적의
and our
플랫폼입니다.
companies to pioneer into the
지금까지
global market.
저의 해외
So far,
순방의
my
동행한
overseas trip
경제사절단은
and the economic delegations that accompanied my
80%
trips,
가까이 차지합니다.
close to 80% of them
이번
are
사우디
small
순방에
and medium-sized companies.
병원 치료용
The young
유전자
entrepreneurs who
검사
accompanied myself to this trip were startups from genetic testing companies for hospital treatment and a company that produces oil and gas facility surveillance drones.
새로운 사업을
And
시작할 수
through this
있었습니다.
diplomacy, they were able to meet with other companies and start new businesses. And also,
네트워크를 구축해
they were able to build networks with large companies that participated in the tour, sharing experiences and information with each other and creating opportunities to advance into the global market. Pioneering the global market involves large companies, mid-sized, small and medium-sized companies, also young startups, and they will all build a cooperative ecosystem to form a large fleet. We will continue to invite many small business owners and young entrepreneurs in the economic delegations. I would like to ask the relevant ministries to keep in mind that economic diplomacy and global market development are directly related to job creation and people's livelihood, and to carefully monitor the results achieved by the government and the delegation through the spirit of One Team Korea.
그리고
And take
정상간에
follow-up
합의한
measures.
협력 사업들이
And also, the cooperative projects agreed upon the leaders of the countries
상대국과 긴밀하게
should be
소통하여
promoted
이행의 만전을
and be in
기해
close
주시기 바랍니다.
co-op communication with the
정부와 기업의
counterparts in
글로벌
the
마켓
other countries.
개척과
Global market
협력은
development and economic cooperation between governments and
일반적으로
companies
받아들여지고
are
있는
carried out
글로벌
based on
스탠다드에
global
기반하여
standards that are
이루어지는 것입니다.
accepted universally in the international
우리의
community.
법과 제도가
In particular,
글로벌
our
스탠다드에
laws and
부합하지 않을
systems,
경우
if it does not
해외
meet the
자본의
global standards,
국내 투자
then
유치에
there
어려움이
may be
큽니다.
difficulties attracting
해외
foreign
진출하는
capital to
우리 기업
invest
또한
in
우리 제도가
Korea.
글로벌
The Korean
스탠다드에
companies
부합할
expanding
때
overseas can also be internationally competitive when the system and the global
우리의
standards
법과
are
제도를
abided by.
글로벌
We must
스탠다드에
adapt our laws and systems to meet the
맞춰
global standards.
그렇게 하여 불필요하고
And thus,
문제 있는
we
규제를
can do away with unnecessary
그것이 바로
regulations. And
일자리를
that
만들어내고
is how we
민생을
create jobs
풍요롭게
and
해주는
to nourish
기반이 되는
the
것입니다.
livelihoods.
저는 대통령 선거
And
시절부터
Ever since I was
지금까지
running for the office
일관되게
and until today,
국가 경제
I have
사회
been consistently
정책의
emphasizing the top
일자리
priority
창출이라고
as national
강조해
economy
이
is
일자리는
the job creation.
국민의 혈세로
These jobs
재정으로 만들어내는 것이
are
아니라
not created by
민간
taxpayers'
주도의
money, but
시장 확대를
with
통한
high quality
양질의
jobs that are
일자리를
created
의미하는
through the
것입니다.
private sector-led
그래서 시장의
markets.
개척과 시장의
So,
확장을 위해서
pioneering and expanding the
대한민국
market,
영업사원으로
it is important,
세일즈 외교의
and that is why
투혼을 불살랐고
I have been
우리의
fighting
법과
with my
제도를
spirit
글로벌
in sales
스탠다드에
diplomacy as
정합시켜
Korea's number
나아가기
one
위해
salesperson,
노력해
and
왔습니다.
worked hard to align our
그
laws
결과
and system with the
정부
global
출범
standards.
1년
And as a
6개월이 지난
result,
지금
1.5
이상 인구
years
전체를
after the
근무로 하고
government was launched,
실제 취업자
the employment
수를
rate, which
근자로 하는
uses the entire
고용률 통계는
population aged 15 and older as the
62.6%
denominator and the actual
역대
number of
어느
employed
정부와 비교해도
people as the
가장
numerator, is 62.6%, the highest compared to any previous governments.
투입했음에도
Although the previous government
5년간
invested a large amount of
취업자 수
taxpayers' money, the number of employed people increased by 213,000 over 5 years.
1년 6개월
On the other
만에
hand, our government increased the number of new
52만
employed
6,000명의 신규
people by
취업자가 증가한 것입니다.
526,000 people in just 1 year and a half, led by the private
민간
sector.
주도로 시장 확대를 통해 52만 6천 개의
And
새로운
we
일자리를
have seen
만들어낸 것입니다.
such
일자리의 질도
increase,
개선되고
and the
있습니다.
quality of the job
이전 정부
is
대비
also improving.
비정규직의 규모와 비중
Compared to
모두
previous
감소하고
government, both
근로
the size
여건도
and proportion of
개선되었습니다.
non-regular workers have decreased,
파탄난 재정과
and working
무너진
conditions have
시장 경제의 회복을 위해
improved. It is a result
기업,
of the joint
정부가
effort of people,
함께
businesses, and the
같은
government
마음으로
to restore
노력한 결과입니다.
the ruined finances and the
정부는 이에
collapsed
만족하지
market
않고
economy.
앞으로
We will not stay
국민과 함께
complacent,
뛰고
but will
또
continue to
뛰겠습니다.
run together with the people
지난주
continuously.
대통령실에서는
Last week,
비서실장,
at the President's
수석,
office, the Chief
비서관,
of Staff,
행정관들이
Chief of
소상공인의 일터와
and the secretaries and the
행정의
administrators visited 36 various sites of people's livelihoods,
찾았습니다.
including small business
국민들의
workplaces
절박한
and welfare
목소리를
administration sites.
생생하게 듣고
And we
왔습니다.
have vividly heard the
고금리로
desperate
어려운
voices of
소상공인
people. The
자영업자들께서는
small business owners are suffering from
죽도록
high
일해서
interest
번
rates.
돈을
And they
고스란히
say that it is
대출
like
원리금
being a
상환에
slave
갖다 바치는 현실에
to the bank, that the reality of
마치
working
은행의 종노릇을
to
하는
death
것 같다며
is to
깊은
repay all the
한숨을
money they
쉬셨습니다.
earn to the bank because of the loan.
외국인 노동자를 고용하고 있는
And the
식당에서는
restaurants that employ foreign workers
끝없이 올라가는 인건비에
are sighing
자영업자들이
because of the
생사의 기로에 있음을
raising,
절규하며
ever rising
외국인 노동자의 임금을 내국인과
labor
동등하게
costs
지불해야
and are
한다는
demanding that
ILO 조항에서
foreign workers
탈퇴해야 되는
are
것 아니냐며 비상대책 마련을
paid equally as domestic
호소하셨습니다.
workers under the ILO article, and they
김영란법은
asked
음식값,
if we could
선물 한도
rethink
규제
about
등이
this article.
너무 현실과
And
동떨어져
also,
있으니 개선해 달라고 호소하셨습니다.
people were also asking to improve the food price.
50인 이하 소규모 사업장에서는
And in small businesses
내년부터
with
적용되는
50 or fewer employees,
중대재해처벌법을 두려워하는
voices
목소리.
fear the Great Disaster
부근,
Punishment
상가
Act
등
that will be
인파
applied from
밀집
next year.
CCTV
And
등
voices were
치안
concerned about
인프라의
the lack of
부족을
security infrastructure
걱정하시는
such as
목소리.
CCTV in crowded
인구가
areas
몰리는
such as Hongdae.
신도시에서 급증하는 방과 후 어린이들의
And also
돌봄 수요에 대한
the aftercare
시급한
school demand that are
정부의 보완책을
increasing
요구하는
rapidly.
목소리까지 하나하나가 현장
All
아니면
such
들을 수
voices
없는
were palpable,
신랄한
and they
지적이었습니다.
were very, very
지금 당장 눈앞에서
honest
도움을 기다리는
and coming straight
국민의
forward.
외침,
And the cries of
현장의
these people
절규에
waiting for help
신속하게 응답하는
that could
것보다
see right before their
더
eyes,
우선적인 일은
there's
없습니다.
nothing more important than
저도
responding
더
to
민생
them
현장을 파고
as
들 것이고
quickly as possible. And
대통령실에서
I will
직접 청취한
delve deeper
현장의
into the lives of
절규를
these people.
신속하게 해결하도록
And
최선을
I would
다하겠습니다.
also like to
이번
ask the
대통령실의
President's
현장
office
방문은
to quickly
일회성으로
resolve
그치지 않고
the people's voices.
지속적으로 국민과
Such visit
직접
to
소통하는
the sites
시스템으로
directly by the President's
정착시켰습니다.
office will not be a one-time
정부
event,
각
but will
부처의
be
장관,
established as a
차관,
system that
청장,
continuously
실국장 등
communicates
고위직은
directly with
앞으로
the public.
민생 현장,
High-ranking officials such as
행정
ministers,
현장을
vice
직접
ministers,
찾아
commissioners,
현장의
heads of
생생한
offices
목소리를 듣고 탁상
will visit
정책이 아닌
people's livelihood
살아있는
sites
정책을
in person to
만들어야
listen
합니다.
to the voices from the field.
대통령실과 총리실이
The
각
President's
부처의
office and the Prime
민생
Minister's
현장
office
직접 소통이
are
제대로
will
이루어지는지
be
늘 관심을
paying
가지고
close
보겠습니다.
attention to see if it is
오늘
properly
회의에서는
communicating and directly
국민연금
communicating with
종합
the
운영
people's
계획을
livelihoods.
심의합니다.
At today's meeting,
이번
we will
국민연금
deliberate
종합
on the
운영
National
계획안을
Pension
두고
Comprehensive Operation
숫자가
Plan.
없는
Regarding
맹탕이라거나
this plan, it's
선거를
called
앞둔
a peace
몸살이기라고 하는
that is
비판
hollow
의견도
without
있습니다.
numbers.
그러나
However,
연금 개혁은
pension reform
뒷받침할 과학적 근거나
is
사회적 합의
not an
없이
issue that can be concluded by
결론적인 숫자만 제시하는
presenting
것으로
only numbers without
마무리
supporting
질 수 있는
scientific
문제가
evidence or social
과거
consensus.
정부는 연금
The
개혁에
previous
대한
government
의지
submitted
없이
4
사개 대안을 제출하여
alternatives without a firm
갈등만
commitment to pension reform,
우리 정부는
resulting in conflict.
이러한 전철을 반복하지
And
않고
my government
제대로 된 연금
will
개혁을
not
이뤄내기
repeat
위해
such mistakes
착실하게
and has
준비해
been steadily preparing to achieve
최고의
proper pension
전문가들과
reform.
80여 차례 회의를 통해
Through
재정
more than
추계와
80 times of
수리
meetings with
검증
Korea's
등
top
과학적
experts,
근거를
we made financial
축적했습니다.
estimates and
24번의
accumulated scientific
계층별
evidence,
심층
including
인터뷰를
mathematical
의견을
verification.
꼼꼼하게
We
경청하고
carefully listened to the opinions
여론조사를
through
실시하여
24 in-depth interviews
일반
at
국민
each level and
의견도
conducted a
철저히
public opinion
조사했습니다.
survey to
이렇게
investigate the
하여
opinion of the
방대한
general public.
데이터 자료가
Through this,
만들어졌습니다.
we have made an
어렵고
extensive
힘들더라도
data.
사회적 합의를 통해
And
국민께 드린
though it might be
약속을
difficult,
지키겠습니다.
we will keep the
정부는
promise that we made to the
지금까지
people.
충실하게 준비한
The government
방대한 데이터를
will
종합
submit
운영
the
계획과
extensive
함께
data that it has been
국회에
faithfully
제출합니다.
preparing so far
국민연금을
to the
포함한
National Assembly,
전체 연금제도
And
구조 개혁 논의를 위한 풍부한 자료가 될
including
것입니다.
the pension system. I
연금
believe that it will
개혁은
be a wealth of material for
법률
discussions
개정으로
for the
완성되는
structural reform.
정부는
A pension
국회의
reform is
개혁
completed
방안
through
마련
legal
과정과
revision. The
공론화
government
추진 과정에도
will actively
적극
participate in the
참여하고
support
지원할 것입니다.
and support the National Assembly's
저는
process
지난 대선
of
시에
preparing reform plans and
제가
promoting
대통령이
public
되면 과거
deliberation.
정부들과 달리
During my
연금 개혁에
campaign,
대한
I promised that if
초당적 합의가
I am
도출될
to
수
be
있도록
elected the
한
president,
정부가
the
과학적
administration
근거와
will thoroughly
국민
prepare
의견
and
조사,
proactively provide
선택
scientific
방안의
evidence,
제시 등을
public opinion surveys,
철저히
and
준비하고
presentation of options
적극
to
나서겠다고
choose
약속드린
so
바
that a
있습니다.
bipartisan agreement on
약속은
pension reform can be
반드시
reached.
지킬
And
것입니다.
I will indeed
정치적
keep this
유불리를
promise.
계산하지 않고
Without
연금
calculating
개혁의
political pros and
국민적
cons
합의
or
도출을 위해
gains, I will do
우리
my best to
정부는
reach a
최선을
national
다할
consensus on the pension
이번
reform.
정기국회에서
During
입법을
this regular
기다리는
session of the
민생
National
관련
Assembly, there are many
법안이
bills
많이 있습니다.
that are related to people's
건전
livelihoods
재정을 위한
awaiting its
재정
enactment.
준칙을 도입하는
We have already
국가
mentioned several times the
회계
need
부정
for
방지를
legislation
위한
such as National
오조금
Finance
관리법,
Act, which introduces
지역 균형
fiscal
발전을
rules for
위한
sound finances,
산업은행법,
the Subsidy Management
미래
Act
산업
to
전략을
prevent
위한
accounting fraud, the Korea Development Bank Act for balanced regional development, and the Aerospace Administration Act for future industrial strategies.
오늘은 특히
Today,
약자
I
보호
would like
법안의
to
시급성을
make an emphasis on the
강조하고자 합니다.
urgency of the legislation to protect the
먼저
vulnerable.
특정 범죄, 특정 경제
The
범죄
Act on
가중처벌법
aggravated punishment for
개정에 관한
specific
것입니다.
economic crimes.
얼마 전 또다시
The revision of such act.
671세대에 이르는
The problem
대규모
of
피해가 발생하는
the
전세 사기 문제가
housing
끊이지
deposit
않고
fraud or
있습니다.
전세 fraud is continuing with
정부는
large-scale
그동안
damage occurring to
신속한 피해
671
지원과
households.
처벌을 위해
The
최선의
government
노력을
has been
기울여
making every
왔습니다.
effort to provide prompt
지금까지
support
피해
and
구제
punishment
신청이 접수된
for the victims.
1,543건
And until now, of the
7,590건의
10,543 applications for damage relief
경매유예,
received so far. Damage support has been decided on 7,590 cases,
맞춤형 지원을
and customized support
신속하게
has been quickly
실시했습니다.
provided to about
향후 경매
2,600
절차 등의
cases,
본격화에 대비해
including
우선
including refinancing loans and emergency welfare,
지원 방안도
in preparation for
상세적으로
the full-scale
준비하고
auction
있습니다.
process in the future.
지난해
We are
말부터
also
이어진
preemptively preparing support
범정부
measures to
전세
this
사기
end.
특별 단속을
Through the
통해
government-wide special
지금까지
crackdown on the 전세
전세
fraud
사기
that has been
범죄자
ongoing since end of last
1,000명
year,
이상을
more than
불구속
1,000
입건하고
people have
100여
been
명을 구속하였습니다.
been
그리고
detained and
이들에게
about 100 have been
법정
arrested,
최고형
and we have responding
범죄 수익
strongly
물수능의
with measures
조치로
such as imposing the
강력하게
maximum
대응해
sentence in
나가고
court
있습니다.
and confiscating criminal
전세 사기는
proceeds.
피해자
The majority
다수가
of these victims
사회
of 전세
초년생인
fraud
청년들로
are young people who are just
미래 세대를
stepping out to the
약탈하는
society, and it is a
악질적인
vicious crime
범죄입니다.
that preys on the future
검찰과
generations.
경찰은 전세
The
사기범과
prosecutors and
공범들을
police will track
지구
down
끝까지라도
such
추적해
fraud offenders and
반드시
their
처단해 주기
accomplices even to the end of the earth, and I hope that they will be punished without fail. We ask the National Assembly to quickly revise the related acts which imposes aggravated punishment by adding up the damages of crimes targeted the majority so that vicious crimes targeting the powerless and vulnerable are never repeated again. The medium-sized businesses, small medium-sized businesses, technology theft is also a serious problem. At the start of Korea's strategy meeting last August, I defined technology theft a serious crime and promised a very strong response. To raise awareness of technology theft and strengthen the effectiveness of damage relief, it is necessary to revise the Win-Win Cooperation Act to strengthen punitive damages currently stipulated at less than 3 times to 5 times. I would like to once again ask for prompt discussion in the National Assembly. Thank you.
That was the 45th cabinet meeting where President Yoon Suk-yeol briefed the public on his diplomatic trip to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. If you missed it, you can still catch the highlights on our upcoming newscast at 12 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Welcome